here is now places 1 through 6. At the end of this race, it is the first level final. We will have a national champion of the 4s in Division 1. On the left, on the lane number 1 will be Rutgers, Stanford lane number 2, Washington lane number 3, Texas lane number 4, Yale lane number 5, lane 6 will be Tennessee.
All right, so this is for the marbles start to go into the jar. We're racking up points here, and oftentimes it's going to come down to the 4. This 4 is pivotal in terms of the team title, and we're going to see some really fast times being thrown down. We saw that in the heats. We saw it in the semifinals. We saw an upset in the 4s with Texas overtaking Stanford in the semifinals the other day, and this is going to be tight all the way down the course. Certainly. Some amazing crews out here, and I expect nothing different from the semifinals to here to the final. It's going to be even tighter than what we saw in the semis.
So out of lane number 5, it is Yale. You can see their bow deck is just ahead of the rest of the field, but the rest of the field is super, super tight. It's in the middle of the screen. It is Washington sandwiched between Texas and Stanford. Stanford's in lane number 2 with that red colored deck. Washington is neck and neck with Stanford, and then right between Washington and Yale will be Texas. There is a lot of pressure. There's a couple seats. Currently, we can say Yale is leading. Washington is in second, but then it's really close between Stanford and Texas, but Stanford and Texas and then Tennessee. Cannot forget about Rutgers out of lane number 1 because they are now holding on to that momentum of Stanford.
Yeah, really great battle there between Yale and Washington. Right now, I'm going to give that very slight lead to Washington. Washington looks to have about a deck, maybe a deck and a seat over Yale. Yale now maybe a seat over Stanford, but I'm sure that there is a lot of jockeying for that position that's going to happen as we progress further up into the course. In 4th place, it's going to be Texas. In 5th, it's going to be Rutgers or Tennessee. Hard to tell, those two crews so close to each other, just separated out by inches.
But if you're the coxswain of Texas as Paris West, I mean, so you can say, yes, we're currently in 4th, but 1st place is 2-3 seats away. I mean, that is a lot of hope, a lot of contact. Washington is pushing their bow into the lead. Yale is going with them. Stanford, it has a lot of overlap. Rutgers is feeling that pressure with Stanford. This is the shot we've been waiting for. It is now in the middle of the field. It is Washington out of lane number 3. They've got their bow deck overlap or into the lead. Then it is Stanford. Stanford now has momentum. As I just said their name, they are going to now start charging, and they want to have that opportunity to be bound like in the lead of this race. So it is still Washington in the lead. Stanford is charging for 2nd place position. 3rd place, look at what is happening for 3rd place. It is Texas, Yale. Then at the top of your screen, we have got to keep an eye on Rutgers, and then now Tennessee is coming into the mix, kind of holding on to the momentum of the pack, but it is Washington still in the lead out of lane number 3.
Yeah, so Stanford has to stay calm and collected. That powerful Washington crew does have the better of them at this moment with about a 4-seat lead, but Stanford is still holding tight and just kind of, powering their way, still holding on to that contact that they have with the Husky boat, but still right there is Yale, still right next to them down by maybe 1 seat is Texas. So close. And right now, even as I look at this overhead shot, not much separating out Yale, Texas, and Stanford. Washington still in the lead. Now, Rutgers, probably the closest threat at this point to popping into one of those top 3 spots. A little bit off the back, it's going to be Tennessee.
As we approach the last 500 meters, you saw just a few moments ago, 7:50 to go. That's still a lot of water to cover, still a lot of time. And Texas was being very sneaky there. We haven't said too much about them right now, but we've seen Texas have just a very methodical, simple race plan. 220 or so strokes till we get to the other end, and we just need to move 1 inch at a time, and that is what Texas has been doing. Washington's out in front. You can see their stroke rate's a little bit higher, maybe a little bit. Maybe they're starting to feel the move that Texas is putting on, trying to burn right through that Washington lead with that slow Texas burn. But as Texas is sneaking up, so is Stanford.
0.8 was the difference, and 0.8 is going to be shrunk because look at Stanford. Stanford is moving.
Here come the Cardinals.
This is deceiving. I want an overhead shot or I want to get a good parallel, but here it is. It is correct. Stanford is now your new leaders of this 4 grand final. National champion is on the line. Stanford is now in the lead.
Stanford is a 4 that we've seen break 7 minutes. That's a very fast time in a 4. And so we've seen them be fast throughout the season, but Texas took them down just yesterday. And right now they are inverting that result and certainly cleaned up a few things since what we saw on the water with them yesterday. Right now it almost looks like they're working their way to a half of a length lead over early leaders of Washington. It's about a 1.5 seconds of time advantage for Stanford. And we're running out of waterway here. Red buoys are happening. Texas is nearly dead level with Washington. Washington had answered just a moment ago. They pulled back up another foot. Right now, Washington in second place has a slight advantage over Texas, but look for Texas to ramp it up. They're going to have to if they want to overtake Washington for that second spot. 22 points toward the team trophy are on the line right here, and Stanford is the one that is moving very quickly toward that maximum level of points. Washington in second as the line is coming up here shortly. Texas currently in third, followed by Yale. Yale is still in there for fourth, but all the way on the opposite side is Rutgers, and they may have enough room left to overtake Yale for that fourth position. But right now, Stanford maintaining and walking away from Washington. Washington maintaining on Texas for that second spot. And across the line, it's nearly dead level between Rutgers and Yale. We cannot even call that from here in the booth. What we know is that Stanford came across ahead of the others, followed by Washington, and then Texas in third. We'll have to wait.
I was going to say Rutgers, but that was a late surge. I mean, Yale just threw their bow deck into the lead, and we'll see. We're going to wait to see. And it was, they held on. I want to see the point. Like 7:01 point what for you?
We already mentioned that breaking 7 minutes in a 4 is an incredibly fast time. 3 of these crews just broke 7 minutes.
Blazing fast time with Stanford taking that win in 6:56. Unbelievable.
Until a national champion is going to be crowned in the second 8s. This is the field. And now we've got a good look at all 6 boats locked onto the stake boats. So again, on the right-hand side of your screen is lane number 1. The left-hand side of the screen is lane number 6. And lane number 1 is Yale, Texas in lane 2, Princeton in lane 3, Stanford in lane 4, Washington in lane 5, and Virginia in lane 6.
Last year's winner is in this race. The winner of this event last year was Stanford. Texas took second, Tennessee took third. It'll be interesting to see who decides to take it today. We have some similar, the same stroke seat from that Stanford. Second Varsity 8 is still sitting there, and Nora Goodwillie. Similar rhythm being laid down as last year, so certainly experience at taking home the crown here. But there are 5 other crews in this race that want to upturn that result because Stanford took the highest placement possible in the 4. If they do it here again in the second 8, that's going to put them on the strongest path toward that team title.
Right, and last year, Texas and Stanford were in a standoff after the grand final of the 2V. They were tied in points, and then, Texas did end up walking away with the national championship by virtue of their victory in the grand final. So we'll give you an update on the points as soon as we have a tally after the end of this race. And of course, everything is unofficial, but we will do our best to update you. But it all goes towards what it means towards the team championship. So all crews are locked on. We're ready to go here.
love that you can hear that beep. You can hear how the signal sounds for the athletes sitting up at the start, and you just have to have that reaction time, but also it has to be a smooth, strong, quick, and not too abrupt reaction time, because every stroke matters. We've seen it come down to photo finishes already, so every single one of these strokes, you want it to be as clean as possible from start to finish.
So good, clean starts. Lane number 2, my eye is gravitating toward that. That is Texas, but then quickly swinging over to Stanford out of lane number 4. Those are your 2 early leaders, just based off of this overhead shot, but as soon as we get a little closer, we can start figuring out, versus Yale and Princeton out of lane 1 and 3, and then lane number 5, Washington versus Virginia. I don't want to say falling off the pace, because again, you got to get yourself into the first 250. You can't win the race in the first 250. It sets up the foundation, but how you transition out of it and going into the meat of the race, that's what's going to get the confidence boosters.
Right, and even if you find yourselves just a little bit off, it is very easy to be even a fraction of a moment, just a millimeter off of one another. You got to keep working to find it and not let it ruffle your feathers. Just stay calm and go, okay, breathe, length, find each other again, one more push all the way down the course. Go ahead.
We did expect Stanford to blast out, and yes, they have.
Yeah.
I'm like, we have to talk about Stanford right now, because look at how they are charging. They're charging over the field. The coxswain of Stanford, her name is Abigail Heineman, and she's about to call bow seat of Washington and maybe even bow deck of Princeton. Washington is in lane 5. Princeton is in lane 3. Having that commanding lead, they're having their moment in their lane, and that's what you want, right? You say, hey, stay in your lane, own your race, and Stanford is just on another level.
Well, let's remember what happened also in the semifinals. I mean, Stanford had an open water win coming out of their semifinals. So, I mean, they have been just absolutely dominant in this category. So, looking at it right here, already with a boat length lead, they look unshakable. I'm not going to jinx anything, but right now, I mean, they just look like they are absolute powerhouses, and they have to be able to come through this with so much confidence. And unlike the 4, where they just kind of waited and were patient and, again, unflappable, that could be part of the strategy. That could be the hallmark of their team, is just don't let anything shake us.
Stanford out in front there, they've had speed on par or better than most of the country's one of these varsity 8s here. This is the second varsity 8, so to have 2 8s that are going that fast is a very impressive show of depth within your program. The Stanford program is not a large one, just 40 to 45 athletes on the entire squad, which allows a lot of coaching attention, which maybe is helping their development here of the entire squad. Right now, Mary, you mentioned a few moments ago that Stanford coxswain was about to call bow ball on Washington, but even so, Washington is in one of those top 2, vying for one of those top 3 positions. They are right now currently battling with Princeton for second place, but those 2 crews in that battle are starting to move up and away from the other 3 boats in the field, looking for, again, most qualifying points possible.
Yeah, when we get this wide shot again, that's going to be the story. I mean, the first story is Stanford is just leading the way. They are the standard. But who's going to get 2nd through 6? And that is the story right here. Washington versus Princeton. They are battling it out for 2nd position. 3rd place, out of lane number 2, they are in a hunt and a fight between Texas and Yale out of lane number 1. So those 2 boats are now battling it out for 4th and 5th place position. 6th place is Virginia out in lane 6, but Washington now is starting to hold with the speed of Stanford, but so is Princeton.
I like what's happening right now in that Washington boat. Either they were responding to Princeton or just continuing to hunt the line rather than worrying about the other teams there. And in the process of having laser vision on the finish line itself, they've taken back maybe 2 seats on that Stanford lead. Stanford was out to maybe the bow ball of the Washington crew was maybe between 6 and 7 seat in the boat, and now it looks like that bow ball might have inched up 1 more seat almost into the middle of the boat. Of course, the angle matters here, but it does look like maybe they were able to take a seat in the last maybe 250 meters. On the leader, Stanford. Stanford's still in a strong spot with just 500 meters to go. I say just because these 8s are going to cover these 500 meters very, very fast.
And coming past the gazebo, I've got some stroke ratings for you. Stanford clocked at 36 strokes a minute. Washington and Princeton both at 37.5. Now in 4th place, it continues to be Texas, but Texas moving up just a couple of seats, so still in 4th 4th place. In 5th, it's going to be Yale on the far shoreline. And then Virginia closest to us on the shoreline in 6th, back by a little bit of open water.
Princeton is looking good in that 2nd position, but so close is Washington in 3rd. But Texas has momentum. They're feeling that momentum from Princeton. Right now, the top 3 is Stanford. So close with Princeton, so close with Washington, and Texas in 4th. It's coming down.
I'm not going to lie, guys. I want to see Stanford sprint. I want to see just how fast they can go. They've been so far up on the rest of the field this whole season.
They haven't had the sprint.
Yeah, so I want to see what that looks like.
Princeton is pushing them right now.
Yes.
You can see it.
And Washington as well. They're flanked. It's a similar H to the previous race, where if you drew a line between those two bow balls, it's just they've hooked right onto that Stanford boat, and they want to move right with them. So we're going to see lots of speed. We're seeing all of these crews come toward the line, still looking kind of comfortable there in that Stanford.
If this is a Cardinal sprint,
I know.
I mean,
Let's look for
this is pretty
second place. It
comfortable
is
here.
Stanford in the lead. Princeton, Washington, it's still neck and neck.
Washington, Princeton. That is my call.
By
Washington,
6 inches. Yeah.
Yale 5th. A little bit of open water back. Here comes Virginia in their last less than 10 strokes to the line. We are going to have to go to regatta timing to see what are the official, and Washington has popped up as the 2nd place position. So close. Look at that, 0.9 versus 15.0.
Yeah.
Princeton got the 3rd place position.
Between Washington and Princeton, it was kind of whose blades were in the water at the right time as they crossed the line, and Washington was able to sneak in there.
Less than a 10th of a second.
So Stanford is your winner. Your national champion.
Well, glassy. Taking a look at our finish, conditions are definitely changing quite a bit through the course. So we've got to be careful. We're getting those nice overhead drone shots, and you can see a lot of white water that comes off of the blades. So, technique matters. Being careful throughout the course and not getting too, I don't think any of these athletes are cocky, but just, being aware of what we're doing with the hands, especially as the stroke ratings come up. These athletes are at the pinnacle of their sport, really at this level. So we're going to see some great racing here, but we've got some challenging conditions up ahead.
So as the crews are now charging off the line from the left-hand side of your screen, it is going to be Brown out of lane 6. Lane number 5 is going to be Texas. Yale will be in the lane number 4 in the middle. The other middle lane and lane number 3 is Stanford. Lane number 2 is Tennessee, and then on the far right-hand side of your screen, lane number 1, it will be Washington.
Look for this certainly to be tight for at least 1,000 meters, and then we'll start to see fitness adjustments. All of these crews are firing on all cylinders right now. All of these crews have become more and more technically savvy. All of these crews are very strong and powerful, so there isn't a lot of kind of sneezing room here, and you have to make sure that you take advantage of every stroke and do the best that you can with every stroke down the course.
And right here on the course, you can see that quartering tailwind going to start to push the lanes a little bit over to port from the left, from the coxswain's point of view, from right to left. So we'll see if anybody's going to be affected, if they're going to be shoved from our vantage point to the right side of the screen. But so far, unshakable. They are just powering through, and that's why we love aids. They're explosive. But let's talk about margins. Go for it.
This is fantastic what we're seeing right now, because in lane 4, that is Yale right now with the advantage over the crew that has not seen a challenge this entire season yet. Tennessee also fast start, looks to be in 2nd place right now, but Yale is the one that wanted to go out and set the tone early. Stanford sandwiched between Tennessee and Yale right now. It looked like just a moment ago that Stanford said, hey, we better get a handle on this early, because these other crews, they've certainly found speed since the last time we saw them. Yale is the early leader by about a half of a length right now, and Tennessee was charging hard, and I think that put some pressure on Stanford that's had them maybe turn up the dial a little sooner than they had anticipated.
And if anyone has fitness experience in the resume, it is that Yale boat. I mean, they have just had a phenomenal season, almost undefeated as they came into the NCAA Championships, almost undefeated, as well, that Stanford crew. And, of course, Tennessee also. I mean, everyone across the board here with just a great record. But, man, I mean, look at this lead already that Yale has. Could this be their year to take this race? I mean, I am just I'm overjoyed for them at this point with a 1-length lead right now over Stanford. I'm not counting out Stanford because we've watched how they've raced throughout this regatta. They are a little bit of a slow burn as they come through. Texas also right there off of the stern deck of that Yale boat. So Texas and Stanford flanking that Yale crew. Texas right now in the second place position, maybe leading Stanford by about a bow deck. But Yale out in front right now. Texas boat sitting on the coxswain of the Yale boat.
Yale to be out in front. They've won the Varsity 8 before historically as a program. They've taken the title in this particular event, so they have experience there in the history of the program having done this. You could just see the adrenaline in their systems in that first 750 meters as that kind of quartering tailwind coming off of the starboard side of the boat kind of hit them in 750 meters in. You could see a little bit of bobbliness in the boat, but they recovered and managed well, because to be where they are on a field this powerful is a pretty impressive place to be, and we are moving very fast down the course. We're already in the back half of the third 500.
7:50 to go, and it is Yale still your leaders, Stanford in second, Texas closing the gaps, really hunting down Stanford, but then the race for fourth and fifth is between Washington and Tennessee out of lanes 1 and 2. Brown is a little slightly off the pace, but here comes Yale. Yale is still owning that first place position. Bow number 3 is just in this foreground that is owned by Stanford, but then in the background, you've got to keep an eye on lane number 5, which is Texas.
You know, that's you can just see Stanford inching up stroke by stroke. But the question is, does Yale have enough room? Can they make this last 500 meters very small by covering it very quickly and make sure that they can move down this course? 500 meters to go. You see the gazebo and the fans. They're just goading them on. They're getting a lot of noise and not a lot of support from the people on shore. Yale has been higher in the rate for the majority of this race than those other two crews. So I want to see if Texas and Stanford have another gear. If not, Yale ran away with it early and just kept on moving. It looks like there's adrenaline in that Yale boat. It's almost as if they can't believe what's happening right now, and they have more gears.
And you can see Stanford taking up the rate right now. They've got to go. If they're going to do it, they've got to go now. But Yale, that's my favorite race plan: get ahead and stay ahead. And if you can hold it, then it's going to work. But and Stanford is going right now. Texas right now just slipping back to third. Up above them, Tennessee continuing in that fourth place position. Washington in fifth, and then Brown in sixth.
Stay clean, make no mistakes. Yale gave themselves a big buffer here, and so it's a heavy lift for Stanford and Texas. 2 seconds or more if they want to overtake them. A little bobble there in that Texas crew.
Big bobble.
And the Texas crew gave Stanford that advantage. So speaking of stay clean, that is a piece of it. Stay clean, keep doing what you're doing because it's working, and that is where you let someone else into the event. Yale had another gear. Even though they were higher all the way down the course, they maintained their length over Stanford. It's almost 3/4 of a length for Yale coming toward the line.
Realizing the dream.
Coming across behind them is Stanford in second place, followed by Texas, then Tennessee, then Washington on the far side, and on the near shore coming across is Brown to round out that field. What an incredible race.
We have a national champion. Yale is your winner of the Division I First Varsity 8.
That is, we've been talking about that. Could we have taken bets? And that's why I didn't take a bet, because it could have been any one of these 8s, and that just proved what any of these boats was capable of. But Yale, they took nothing. They did not hold those cards close to their chest.
Well, think about it.